Hello and welcome to Bespoke Unit. My name's Paul Anthony.
I'm CP.
And today we're going to be exploring the most common seasoning methods for a wooden humidor. If, like me, you're impatient, which maybe relates to method 1, and you want to find out the best way to do it, we've made an additional video which you can click here or see as the first link in the description below.
Now, if you like cigars as much as we do, you're probably going to want to keep them nice and seasoned inside your humidor. Therefore, it's important to find the best method to do so, and we've been exploring all the different methods available. The three most popular methods to go by are number 1, forcing it, number 2, the wipe down and water method, and number 3, which we'll touch on, is the Boveda humidity seasoning packs. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each one and what we feel is the best way forward. So, Paul, forcing it, are you guilty of this?
Yeah, I think as a new cigar smoker, you really maybe don't appreciate and respect, the kind of traditions of how these cigars are made and how you should really respect storing them as well. So, when I first got into cigars, I go and buy a few cigars. I just throw them in a bag or whatever. I'll get a cheap humidor. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
A lot of the time it's like a $20, $30 one with a glass top, which again is getting a bit suspect. And you're going to get something like this. You're going to get some like CIGAR gel, or you're going to get some Boveda packs that are kind of 65 to 69% RH. Or you're going to even just put a bowl of bloody water in there, or put nothing in there, So the way that you may want to force seasoning is by putting cigars and a humidification agent in the humidor at the same time.
I remember with my humidor that I use today, that sometimes you see in the background of my older videos, is a humidor that Paul gave me a number of months back, and I absolutely loved it, but I knew nothing at the time about seasoning, and Paul warned me, because he had more experience in it, but
I made those mistakes.
And I just chucked the cigars in, and I chucked as many of these gel packs in, some water, I filled up the foam, threw some Boveda packs, and I thought, I'm just making sure that the number was just right on the hygrometer, which was an awful mistake to make.
It really is, because what you're really fighting is, just say you're putting these cigars in at, say, an optimal RH, 65, 67, all the way to 70, but you're throwing them in an environment that has a very low RH. You're just pushing and pulling. So actually what's happening is the humidor sucking moisture out of the gel, but they're also sucking moisture out of the cigars.
Exactly.
Which is obviously not fantastic overall. So please guys, if this is cigars are new to you like they were to Charles, and like they have been to everybody, everyone has to start somewhere. Please do not try and adopt this method. If you're impatient and you don't want to enjoy the benefits of a wooden humidor, which there's a link below where we explore the pros cons of wooden humidors, then just jump straight to a situation where you've got like a humidification bag, or you're using an acrylic humidor, or a Ziploc Tupperware container where you don't actually have to season it because it's in an airtight environment with no kind of wood in it. But if you really want to take advantage of wood.
Exactly. So I realized that I was doing a huge mistake. I started seeing that some of my cigars were really suffering, really starting to fall apart, dry, they would burn really quickly, and I was concerned, so I started talking about it with Paul, and he started giving me advice and like telling me where to go next. So the next step was to properly season the humidor, and I went through the most basic way of going about it, which is with distilled water, a sponge, and
or a
cloth,
or
or a towel,
or any sort of wipe down method in general.
Exactly.
Even some companies make like pre-distilled water infused cloths.
Really? Okay.
Which again is just obviously a marketing spin to sell water. But so what we're actually trying to do with this seasoning method, as we may have touched on, is to get the wood and the cigars and whatever humidification method you're going to be using going forward at an equilibrium.
So the first thing you do when you're actually going to season a humidor is you get rid of your cigars. Not get rid of them like chuck them out, but
You could smoke them all.
yeah, you could do that. But that's what we probably actually do and did.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do we do now? We put them somewhere. Where are we going to put them?
So, you know, for me, what I'm going to probably use for convenience is one of these Boveda humidor bags. All it is, it's not like a traditional Ziploc. There's actually going to be no moisture exchange through the plastic. It's like specially designed. You know, throw them in there for every 25 count of cigar. Throw in 1 or 2 Boveda packs, and you can just put them in a dark place, either in a cupboard. Make sure it's not experience any major temperature swings, etc. But the focus of this is really how we're gonna season them. So once we put these back in the humidor, they're gonna start to infuse some of that cedar flavor. When you open it, you're gonna get that salivation in the mouth, which I know is something that Charles.
I absolutely love the
really
smell
likes.
of cedar in the morning.
So anyway, this method, if you go on YouTube, as you are probably here, or at bespokeunit.com, you're going to type in how to season a humidor. And what you're going to see is 1,000,001 guys that are going to be like, as Charles-Philippe says, get your sponge, get your water, and start basically, pour your water in here, dip it around, and then just swill it around. And basically, do you want to demonstrate for the show?
There we go.
You got a great sponge action.
Practice cleaning many cars as a Boy Scout.
Oh, there we go.
So you want to wipe down every single surface in here, everything from your separators to the shelves to the humidor walls themselves, and you want there to be a nice light film of water. You don't want it to be dripping, you don't want it to be still dry, you just want there to be a noticeable little color change. And then once that's done,
yep, you can fill like a little dish up,
and you pop it right in.
Pop it in, and then put all your accoutrements back in as well. And then that's it. You're pretty much going to be ready. So that's the method. So, what are the benefits of this method? Well, one, you're actually seasoning the thing, which is not true of option 1. 2, it's very inexpensive. And I mean, as you can see, this was actually earmarked as my cigar humidor distilled water bottle.
Very organised, Paul.
To not be confused with my non-distilled water. Not for non-humidors.
Bear in mind, it is important to use distilled water. Why? Because tap water and mineral water, they have additives. Well, the mineral water has minerals from the source, but they do have traces of salt, chemicals, and other additives which can be detrimental to your cigar's health and won't have the same effect on the wood. So it's very important to use distilled water.
Sure. So now we're kind of gone over the 2 main pros of this method. What the real big cons are one, that oversaturating the wood can cause an ultra humid environment which can actually breed bacteria and like fungus and mold in there basically, which again, I'm not sure you want to be putting something that you're going to be smoking into a mold infested environment. And then the second one, which is your kind of funny story about this method.
Yeah. So the first time I did this, I was a little bit overzealous on the water and it was pretty much dripping. I then closed it, came back a couple of hours later to see how it was going, and I couldn't open it. The lips here had just basically become bulging and swelled with all the humidity, and it was impossible to open. For a good number of days I had to wait because I didn't want to force it. Eventually I managed to pry it open, and I had to leave it open for another couple of days to let that swelling go down.
Sure, I mean, and this is only like $100 humidor, and this is the one I actually use at my office, and I've had it for a year now, and even though it's only $100, I mean, I get a flatline 68% RH out of it, which is fantastic. But this is not going to have as high a construction quality as something like a Davidoff humidor or an Ellie Blue. I mean, we're talking $100 here. Again, value for money, phenomenal. Link below on where you can buy it. But being overzealous, as you said, in with probably what is relatively inexpensive humidor that I was my cheap gift to you. They're not going to have as strong a construction, and you're going to have some of these issues that Charles mentioned. You may also stain the wood. There's like a whole bunch of downsides to really what is you know, oh, and also the time it takes.
Yes, time
You
it
know,
takes, and
it's-
it's messy. It's just messy.
You know,
It's
and
a
you're gonna
pain
have
in
to
the ass.
redo it, and it's just kind of like, you know, and a lot of these are like veneers on like cedar veneers on like, you know, whatever. But
Exactly.
you know, so that's kind of really method 2. So any sort of wipe down method, again, it's way beyond just forcing them. You know, with kind of trying to pump, you know, humidification
least here you're
sources.
trying to do the
yeah,
right
you're trying.
thing,
I mean, you're trying to do something, but
Yeah, have the
you
sponge.
know, over the course of time, we've become much wiser. And
You have. I haven't yet learned. You're going to have to tell me how to do this because
well, you're wise by association.
the osmosis is.
The osmosis. I mean, talking of osmosis, so pretty close here. So what with method 3 is the Boveda seasoning packs, and what these are is basically distilled water in a salt solution, and it gives off moisture at 84% RH once it's in somewhere. So they recommend here at Boveda, and we've been very fortunate to have very lengthy and I'm sure somewhat you know, boring conversations.
Trying at
times. I mean, we've asked every bloody question under the sun to this poor guy at Boveda, Rob, who is actually a fantastic gentleman.
He's given us some
been
fantastic
very
advice.
patient, and he actually runs the Box Press podcast. If you're into cigars, I highly suggest you check that out. From 101s to interviewing people in the industry, etc. We'll put a link below to his podcast. So anyway, what you want to do with these suckers is you want to identify the capacity of your humidor. This is a 100 count humidor, and you want one of these per 25 count. So Charles, would you like to do the honors?
I will do the honors. So for 100 count humidor, how many are we putting in?
I'm going to put 4 in.
That's it, 4.
Just put me on the spot with that math, Charles.
Quick maths.
Quick maths. So anyway, we've got them in there. So can you use too many of these, Charles?
Well, from what I heard, yes, you can. The differences compared to your regular Boveda humidity packs, which you can put in as many as you like and they will do the job because they're two-way, is that when you're seasoning your humidor, these will give and give and give, and the wood will keep on absorbing. You put in too many of these and you risk actually making the wood swell and absorbing too much humidity, and it can cause cracking and other sort of distortions and ill effects on the wood itself.
Because like the biggest issue with all of these desktop humidors, especially these less expensive ones, is going to be the seal around here. So if you're applying too much moisture in these areas, you're going to potentially compromise that seal, which is going to have long-term detrimental effects to the performance of the humidor itself, which is one of the main criticisms of the wipe down method. So again, guys, regular Boveda, two-way humidity control, truck as many as you want in. They recommend 1 60-gram pack per 25 cigars. Here we're 1 60-gram pack per 25 cigar capacity. However, as Charles said, you can overdo it. If, like me, you have other types of wooden humidor solutions, such as a like coolador or windador, where you maybe have cedar shelves or cedar drawers, you're going to want to kind of adhere to this. They also make a 320-gram pack, which can do 1 cubic foot of area, but you may want to use these smaller ones in some of the drawers to really kind of get in there, kind of path of least resistance stuff. So with these, the question is, Charles, how long do we leave them in there?
How long do we leave them in there? I believe it was 2 weeks.
It is indeed 2 weeks. So, so we're in there for 2 weeks, and once they're in there for 2 weeks, they've given up enough moisture into the wood that we're actually going to take them back out and throw them away, because we're going to throw them away due to the fact they're not going to be as, like, these are brand new out of the packet today. They're going to potentially be hard, or they still may be quite, you know, like liquidy. I don't know what you would say.
Viscous, porous,
not really
gooey,
porous. Yeah, gooey, who knows. Yeah. But anyway, they may be like this, they may not be like this. Regardless, if they're not like this, it probably means that your humidor, if they were like this, that means your humidor is probably going to be relatively well seasoned. This is a year-old humidor. As I say, it's been performing extremely well for me. So during this, my second seasoning, I don't expect these to really like dry up too much. If it's a brand new humidor, then we may see these getting a little bit, you know, crunchy. But once you've used them once, you cannot recharge them. And there's another video below where we talk about Boveda and kind of recharging, using them, all that kind of stuff. See the links below. You're going to throw them out because they're one and done. And then you're basically just going to put your cigars back in.
Perfect. Anything else that we need to do?
No, that's really it. So the only other thing I'd probably add to this video of you guys that got a new humidor, this is not a one and done process. So probably when you get a new humidor, you're going to want to do the seasoning immediately, and then you're going to want to probably do it again for 3 or 4 years as the wood matures and ages in the humidor itself. There's also another scenario where if the RH drops below 60%, you're going to want to do another seasoning event. And how would you tell if the RH had dropped below 60%, Charles?
Well, with a calibrated hydrometer, of course.
Yeah, we're all going to be talking about calibration of hygrometers in additional videos, which you'll see the links below. The most important thing about hygrometers is to calibrate them, because their plus minus variances are wild out of the box, and we need to make sure that we're keeping on top of that. So whether it's, we wouldn't really use analog, but we were going to be using digital, or we're going to be using one of the digital sensors, whether it's the Boveda sensor, the sensor push, or the CIGAR, which are probably the 3 most popular on the market today. We really want to track and maintain the kind of microclimate within your humidor. This can actually change during the seasons as well. So, you know, here in the northeast of the US, in the winter, it gets very, very low RH outside. So I may want to put, if you're familiar with Boveda, you may want to put a 72% pack in there. And in the summer, where it's a lot more humid, you may want to drop it down to a 69 or 65, depending on, you know, some of the conditions in your house. It's not sitting outside, but you really want to take in consideration some of the outside RH as well. And that's just being proactive in protecting your cigar investment. So
it's much better to be proactive rather than try and repair the damage that has already been done, because sometimes it's irreversible. And remember that you are investing quite a pretty penny in these wonderful cigars, such as your lovely Camacho Diplomas or your Avo 30th anniversaries.
Correct, or even ones that you inherited from your grandfather.
Indeed, yes.
So these cigars is a passion of ours. It brings people together. It connects families. You know, and I think one of the best things about cigars is just the sheer camaraderie of the community. With that being said, if any of that cigar community, you guys out there watching it, whether you're new or a seasoned veteran, have anything else to add, please do so in the comments below. We have our 3 methods: the force it, do not do; the wipe down method, questionable; or the Boveda seasoning packs. If you have anything beyond that, please, please, please comment below. Ask any questions or leave any comments you may have. Trolls, please stay away, but it's always funny when you do so. Like this video and subscribe to our channel. I am Paul Anthony from Bespoke Unit, your guide to the Dapper life.
And I'm CP.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care.